Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our 2021 IT and IS&R intern presentations. So we have 6 interns here this summer with us, and so they are going to be walking you through what they worked on this summer. A little quick agenda today. So Beth Zook is going to kick us off and have a little welcome statement. And then we'll just go down the list for the 6 interns that we have this summer. So we'll start with Andrew, Brandon, Carson, Claire, Katrina, Kieran, and then we will close the presentation. Just a reminder, interns are going to be presenting on what they did over the 12 weeks, and you are welcome to post any Q&A questions for them in the chat, and the interns will be answering it directly right there. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them, and it's highly encouraged as well. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Beth Zook.
Thanks, Abby. Just checking, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Thank you, everyone, and welcome. This is always a very fun time. I always enjoy this meeting and seeing what our interns have worked on from a project perspective. At Amway, we very much value our interns and the work that you do. We don't look at it as you just kind of coming in and doing something that is not value add. Our internship projects really do add value to the organization, and many of them that have been done in prior years are still actively being used today. And so we truly do value all that you do for Amway, and we hope it's been a great learning experience for you as well. Our internship program also has been a wonderful pipeline for future team members in the organization. And so it's something that we truly value. And, you know, the one real disappointment for me with the pandemic and the way we've had to work from home is that we, you know, haven't been able to have as robust of a program because of the work from home. But we're still very grateful that we have the 6 of you. You're a lean and mean team and have done a lot of great work. And so we definitely thank you. It's been wonderful to meet all of you and appreciate what you've done. And so I want to kick it off, but thank you for your work. Appreciate it. And encourage you all to please connect with as many people as possible from Amway on your LinkedIn, as I think it's super helpful to keep those connections going as you move forward in your journeys into your career. And so without further ado, I will kick it off to our first intern, Andrew Fikema, who will start it off. So thank you very much, and best of luck to you all.
Thank you, Beth. Thanks for that introduction. That was great. All right, so my name is Andrew Fikema. I'm a senior at Calvin University studying for a Bachelor of Computer Science with a math minor. And this summer, I am working as a front-end developer for the order placement team in the Commerce portfolio. I plan to graduate in May of next year to enter a career in software development. This is my second internship here at Amway, and I'm very excited to continue contributing to the company's technical development. Now, as a student at Calvin, I've engaged with a wide variety of computing topics in CS courses, from statistics to data structures, operating systems, artificial intelligence, computer security, and perhaps most significantly, web development. I'm also interested in coding for personal projects, cooking for myself and my friends, and I occasionally enjoy running outside. You switch to the next slide. Oh, you already did. Okay, great. So for what I accomplished this summer, as in this internship as a developer for the order placement team, I've worked to patch revealed issues and implement desired features on Amway.com's checkout and cart pages. So my team is responsible for patching and improving these pages and any associated backend operations for Amway's e-commerce platform in North America. This team also works to manage application releases and monitor incidents emerging in our products. And the vast majority of the work that I've completed in this internship has been in implementing bug fixes and features for our customer checkout experience. You pass to the next slide, please. Okay, great. So Amway's commerce platform is a complex system that hosts a myriad of capabilities, including web experiences, recurring orders, and payment and fulfillment. So near the top right corner of this incredibly convoluted diagram, you can see a set of applications written over in Angular, and this is the set of customer-facing single-page web applications. And through an API gateway slightly to the left over there, you can see that these micro front ends interact with our Hybris platform, which manages shopping data for our customers. So the capabilities of this platform are managed by several teams, and like other development teams in the commerce portfolio, the order placement team includes product owners, Scrum Master, and QA testers, as well as developers. Next slide, please. Okay, so as a developer on this team, I've provided fixes and assistance on 13 bugs and 17 stories so far. I've also worked to refactor pieces of application state behavior to eliminate code duplication in the front end. And as I've worked on this team, I've really noticed four main stages in the work that I performed, ranging from issue acceptance, solution discovery, design and implementation, and unit testing. Now, for issue acceptance, for developers, we need to be able to assess our skill set, any business value and team resources to determine the feasibility and impact of potential fixes and features. For solution discovery, which is possibly the most time-consuming stage of development, developers will often need to inspect multiple levels of abstraction to discover the definition of certain functionality. And this is true for basically any piece of software that we work with when it's at enterprise scale. This is, for the front end, this is complicated by asynchronous state management tools, which I will describe later. So number three is design and implementation. And this is the core of development work, what most people picture when they think of programming. Often developers can find multiple potential solutions, and this requires us to make informal solution proposals. And as developers, we need to be able to write changes as required to satisfy our story definition, while keeping in mind the importance of flexibility and efficiency in our code base. So finally, developers will write unit tests, which discretely define any expected operations of our individual software components. And we'll often review our story requirements and use mock services and stubs instead of the full service to keep our tests running fast. This unit testing is complemented by testing performed by other members on our team. Some will perform QA testing, which tests features manually and automatically. We also have integration and regression tests, which continuously test features and the flow of our applications. So next, I'd like to demonstrate two fixes that I have implemented as a member of this team. Next slide, please. So first, I'd like to demonstrate PayPal authorization navigation. So after filling out the shipping and payment details and selecting PayPal as the customer's PayPal method, they would continue to PayPal to authorize their transaction. However, in the past, when the customer returned from PayPal without completing their payment, they would not be able to reattempt payment through PayPal. So now instead, the user can navigate back and forth between PayPal and checkout repeatedly without raising errors or chaining tokens in the URL generated on return. So for the next slide, I'd like to demonstrate my work to refine the credit card form at checkout. Now, in selecting a credit card at checkout, the user used to be able to edit the name to become completely blank or enter only spaces. So now if the user attempts this, the card form entry form will display an error and block saving the improperly changed card. I was also able to re-implement error handling for invalid expiration dates entered in this form. Next slide, please. All right. So I'd like to describe some of the most significant tools that I've used in my work to implement fixes like this. So the most formative tool that we use here at Amway as web developers is Angular. And this is Amway's choice web development framework, which provides a number of constructs and libraries to deliver a smooth, secure, and maintainable web experience. So web frameworks like Angular make it really easy to write, maintain, and scale our web applications. And they provide several tools and libraries that simplify any common web development tasks, including routing URLs to appropriate handlers, interacting with databases, supporting sessions and user authorization, formatting output, and improving security against web attacks, according to the Mozilla Developer Network. Another significant tool that we use, which complements Angular, is RxJS for reactive state management. So Amway's checkout page contains really hundreds of data points, which is quite surprising, and also includes several actions to affect those data points. So this is even just checkout is an immensely complex application. So we use a reactive state management tool like RxJS to treat our operations on this application state as a stream. And this will help us prevent race conditions in accessing data and keeps every operation running smoothly. So for the next slide, I'd like to describe learning takeaways. Number one really is the ability to seek assistance intelligently. So knowing the tools to use and where to find information is really paramount to success as a developer. This comes down to knowing how to learn. So documentation, plugins, and debugging tools, these are all digital tools, and they're all very important for uncovering important aspects of our code section. And when any digital resources are insufficient, we need to know who to reach out to based off of ownership of functionality or by inferring a coworker's experiences. And that knowledge is also fundamental. So focus on the skill. It leads me to point out a significant pain point that I and other developers have experienced, that knowledge of our platforms could be more greatly dispersed. Now, we do have extensive internal documentation hosted on Confluence that describes our systems and the way we perform work, but it's hard to navigate for new and veteran employees alike. And for this reason, I recommend greater efforts to formalize our information sharing as a technology department. This could include formal technology and documentation briefings at onboarding, or a landing page for a pre-configured development environment template such as Docker images. Resources such as these would help developers easily jump into new areas of work in the company. So I'd like to note that just as last year, I've gained a significant competency in technology, workflows, and software development principles, and I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity to work with this enterprise team to deliver great experiences. I've also gained a significant certain attention to detail in regards to our customer experiences, and though our objectives are already defined, developers can walk through their stories as a customer and observe pain points to adjust solutions and suggest our further improvements. Next slide, please. So my team has been very supportive in facilitating my contribution to this platform, and I'm very grateful for all the people that I've had the privilege to work with. And I wouldn't have been able to accomplish this work without the people who work alongside me. So for that reason, I greatly valued the opportunity to work with this team or a similar team at Amway following this internship or after graduation in May. So thank you for listening, and I will gladly answer any questions submitted in the chat. And with that, I pass the floor to Brandon Thomas.
Hello and good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Andrew, for the handoff and for the excellent presentation. And thank you, everyone, for attending today as well. Us interns really do appreciate you being here and taking an interest in our presentations and what we did over this summer. So thank you for that. And similar to Andrew, I'm just going to start off my presentation here with a small introduction about me before I start talking about what I did over this summer. Next slide, please. So for those of you not on my team that haven't had a chance to get to know me this summer, I am a Grand Valley State University student going into my senior year this upcoming year with an expected graduation date of next April, studying computer science. And I have also been part of the Frederick Myers Honors College my entire time at Grand Valley. And a little fun fact about me is I actually originally came here to Grand Valley to study nursing. So I was pursuing a BSN degree, but I eventually made the decision to really pursue my passion in life, which is technology and ultimately computer science, and I haven't looked back since. So I really love what I'm doing now. And so, but because of that background, I do have a lot of various medical certifications. So I'm basic life support certified, CPR and AED. So not relevant to my work today, but hopefully won't have to use those skills in the future. So in my free time though, cool fact about me is I am an avid archer. Not as much nowadays, but I was actually a nationally competing archer for about 10 years on the #1 team in the country. And I actually qualified for the World Championship a couple years. I also love weightlifting and exercising. I'm a PC gamer, and like a lot of us in the technology field, I do try to program in my free time as well because it really is a joy for me. So just a few other fun facts as well. I'm a movie enthusiast. I love anything space related, and I do have 2 cats named Emmett and Jerry. And the next slide here, I'll just give you a couple pictures as my cat tags. So on the bottom here is Emmett, and he's just going on, he's about 3 years old. And then Jerry, I got pretty recently, and he's still a kitten, and he's about 5 months old. So the point of the presentation today, though, is really for you to get a chance to know what I did over this summer, too. So on the next slide, I'll give you a glimpse at what I did this summer. So I will say there's a couple things I'll mention here at the end that I got the chance to complete this last week here or so after I completed the presentation. But I really started off my summer working within the CRM Foundations team here, which is responsible for a lot of different communication channels to ABOs and customers, like SMS, push, email. So they do transactional messaging and other services like that, which enable for better communication to ABOs. So going along with that idea, we have a platform called 360 Messaging, which enables a lot of those services. So one thing in AWS, or rather that AWS offers, is a service called CloudWatch, which handles all of the logging that goes on within your services. So originally, how this was set up is that we were doing logging in a lot of these functions that we have hosted, but we don't necessarily want all of the logs depending on the environment. So if it's development or QA or the production environment, you kind of need different logs showing depending. So that incurred a lot of costs for the team in general. So my first project this summer was creating a shared logging module for all of the 360 messaging Node.js and Java Lambdas. And so this parameterized all of the logging that was going on. So for instance, in the production environment, there's basically no logging going on unless it's error messages. So that will reduce the logging costs that the team's incurring in the future by a lot. So really happy to be making an impact like that. And then the last 2 or 3 weeks here of my internship, I have also had the pleasure of working on the team's new Preference Center project, which is super exciting. So we're going to give ABOs the opportunity to change how they receive emails, SMS, push from us. They can opt in or out and change the language, things of that nature. So a really great project. And so I got to work on some of the APIs that we need for that project moving forward. So specifically, I worked on handling some of the translation APIs. So what's not on here is I worked on the update and delete APIs using the gateways and lambdas, but I also had the chance to work on some post methods, so creating those translations as well. And other than those 2 projects or pieces of work, I also worked on resolving some bugs with the order API that we have with Narvar, which I'm still working through, and also rotating AWS access keys. And then I also upgraded all of the Node.js runtime configurations for all of the 360 messaging lambdas that we have. So that being said, getting a glimpse of my work, what technologies did I learn? So we can take a look at that on the next slide here. So language-wise, TypeScript and YAML were the two new ones for me, with TypeScript, of course, being the language I used more this summer. So that was really great to learn. I knew a little bit of JavaScript already, but JavaScript, Java, and XML, I got to improve as well. So that was really great to build up my foundation with those languages. In terms of other technologies, a lot of this team's work, the CRM Foundations team works within AWS, so a lot of these other technologies relate to AWS. So the big ones on this table here are probably CloudWatch, DynamoDB, API Gateway, and Lambda and CloudFormation. And I also had the opportunity to work with these other ones in different capacities, like code build and code pipeline, for instance, to deploy these changes to the different environments, which also aligns with learning CI/CD concepts, which was new to me. So that was really great to learn too. So I won't go into the detail of all those different technologies and what they do, because we could probably be here all day talking about them, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with some of them at least. But that's just a general overview of the big technologies I worked with this summer. Other than that, I learned a lot of technologies and skills related to Agile. You know, Amway has a huge Agile transformation happening right now. And so that's something we talk about in school, but I got a lot of experience and knowledge with that this summer. So, you know, the different sprint meetings, the refinements, the retros, planning, even some of the product meetings, using Kanban and sprint boards, all of that I got to learn this summer. So that was a super great experience. In addition to that, you know, I got to use some other tools and software like Jira and Confluence for the team's documentation, Okta for authentication, Bitbucket for repos, and you know, of course, coming into this internship, I was familiar with Git and GitHub, but like any other skill, you know, you use it more and more, and so that really improved for me as well. So we can move on to the next slide here. So I guess another good question you might be wondering too is, what business value did I have the opportunity to add to Amway this summer as an intern? So to address this, I think it's first really important to talk about what value the CRM Foundation team adds in general to the Amway goals. The first thing the team adds value for is just, like I mentioned earlier, easier communication between ABOs and customers and the business through those different channels I discussed, like SMS and email. It allows for Amway products to access the messaging technology. It also, kind of in line with the first point, it's easier for ABOs and customers to receive messages. And then finally, the CRM Foundations team is helping to close the gap between Amway and its strategic technological goals. So how does my work fit in with those values? Well, the shared logger, I think it could be a tricky one when looking at it, but I think really it upholds Amway's goals of reducing AWS costs across the board. So that's kind of relating to the broader strategic technological goals. And like I said earlier, I do think that work was really meaningful for me to feel like I had a real impact on the business. In the preference translation API work is going to facilitate communication, of course, between ABOs and customers and the business, especially working with the translations, and Amway being such a global company, that'll make a big impact in the future. And then the bug fixes, specifically with the Narvar order issues I discussed a little bit earlier, helps make communication more clear and consistent when we resolve things like that. So we can move on to the next slide here, please. And I don't have quite as nice of a animation as Andrew to show here for my demo or showcase, but it's a little bit harder for me to demonstrate my work as well. I think in the top left here, you can see kind of an example of what this logging solution does that I was speaking of. So in the top left here, you can see, you know, in the production environment, we might be getting 15, 16 more logs per call of an API, and this is happening millions of times. So we have all these logs happening, and using this share logger, we're able to reduce this down to 3. Or, you know, it may depend depending on the API call. But over the course of millions of calls, it'll really make a difference. And then on the bottom here, we have some of the API work. of course, I know it's not super easy to see what's going on here, but we're just looking at a Dynamo table and kind of seeing how the flow of these APIs work. So I create an API gateway, which then reaches out to a Lambda, which controls some bit of code. And then this code activates something that reaches out to the Dynamo table. So in the instances that I mentioned earlier, this will be deleting a translation, updating it, or creating one to put in these tables. And so that's just a little bit of a demo, and hopefully that gives you kind of an idea of a couple of the things I did this summer. And then for the next slide, I'll probably also want to know what my favorite parts of the summer were. So I did not think I'd get to go to campus at all. So shout out to Jennifer White for touring me around campus. I really appreciated that, and it was an amazing experience to, really to actually visit Amway and see what it's about. I also really appreciated towards the beginning of my summer the ACS picnic and getting to see both my coworkers, just some new people that aren't within my team, and leadership within Amway. Learning new technologies and skills, of course. The main goal of the internship, but also just something that is really fun. Masterclass is a really great offering that we're doing here, and that was a fun experience for me to tune in every week too. Meeting new people, all of the intern events. So again, another shout out to our intern core team for hosting all of them, such as this event, and working with my own team, because the CRM Foundations team really is an amazing group of people. So I think to summarize all of this, I'm really thankful for just the meaningful work this summer. I think it's really easy just to get work that enhances your skills but doesn't necessarily add to the business value. So I'm thankful to Amway and to the CRM Foundations team for giving me work that I felt mattered and that was making a difference here at the company. So thank you for that. And then on my final slide here, I just wanted to say, again, thank you to everyone in attendance today for just being a part of Amway and making it what it is. And thank you to everyone from my team who is both here and not here today, who gave me really just an amazing internship experience and supported me throughout, gave me tools and knowledge. And so for that, I am super thankful. If you have any questions that you would like to ask me, feel free to post that in the Q&A too. I would love to answer any questions. And with that being said, though, I will pass it off to Carson for his presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Brandon, for the handoff and awesome job. I want to thank all of you for tuning in as well to see what us interns have done over the summer. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Carson Ecker-Herman, and I was a part of the business performance tools this past summer. Next slide. Some information about myself is I'm a senior at Grand Valley State University, and I'm majoring in computer science. Some things I like to do in my free time is camping, hiking, baking, gardening, spending time with family and friends. I also geek out on Star Wars, anything Marvel, and Lord of the Rings. I'm also a cat dad. Her name is Ellie, or Elle for short, and she's named after 11 from the show Stranger Things. I also want to give a shout out to my entire team, the Business Performance Tools, for their assistance they have provided for me. I also want to give a special thank you to my upline, Hema Sharma, and my mentor, Nate Bergeron, both of whom have provided extra guidance and encouragement. Next slide, please. So over the course of the 12 weeks, I had the opportunity to work on 2 different projects. The first was the rebuild of the ANA dashboard, which is a collection of tools that are specific to the North America market. And they help IBOs kickstart their business through a new program called the Entry Model. My second project was the ABO Journey Tree. This was a fun project that was assigned to me and is currently a proof of concept. It's an interactive web application that shows the progress of several awards that an ABO can achieve. Next slide, please. So the ANA dashboard is the very first thing an IBO will see when they log into the Business Center. This new dashboard will be launching live in September and introduces some new requirements through the entry model program. The entry model program will tailor the experience and tools around the nature of the IBO's business. For example, in the first image to the right, we have an IBO that just signed up, and they are shown a list of onboarding goals to complete to grow their business. In the second image, they have completed the education courses and have made progress towards the remaining goals. Next slide, please. The A&A dashboard also introduces some new improvements and upgrades. A new user interface and layout provides a refreshed look and refined experience for our IBOs. To stay on the cutting edge, we also implemented some new upgrades, such as we upgraded our code base from JavaScript to TypeScript. Some benefits of doing so is better error detection, improved readability, and reliability. We also upgraded our web components from Lit Element 1.0 to Lit Element 2.0. Next slide, please. So the ABO journey tree is a way to help ABOs visualize their long-term goal through the Amway's compensation program. How can a tool like this be helpful? Although we have lots of tools and training materials that explain the details of each incentive, it can be challenging or overwhelming to understand where an individual's current place is within all of these programs. The ABO journey tree aims to solve that problem by providing a clean, always available user interface, which presents a roadmap through the first few Core Plus incentives, highlighting the ABO's achievements as they progress and laying out the path towards their next challenge. Next slide, please. The idea for this project was inspired by video game skill trees. The image on the right is an example of what a skill tree might look like. It starts at a point of origin and then branches out to show different pathways or journeys for how a character can increase their skills and abilities. In our case, though, we are showing the different steps and requirements that are needed to achieve certain incentives. Next slide, please. Some of the tools I've used to build the journey tree are D3, React, CSS, and JavaScript. D3 is also known as data-driven documents and is a JavaScript tool and library that uses a combination of SVG and HTML under the hood. The visual components and structure of the journey tree is made using D3. React then uses state management of the data and wraps D3 inside of it. JavaScript is used for controlling the business logic to determine the progress of the incentives and calculations. Next slide, please. There are two main views of the journey tree, desktop and mobile. In the desktop view, each incentive is represented by a large bubble. Incentives that have requirements will show an outer ring around the incentive bubble, with requirements attached to the outer ring. Incentives are shaded blue when they are currently active, and gray when they have not met requirements, and green when an ABO surpasses or graduates from that incentive. Information about the incentives can be viewed by clicking on them. One thing to mention is for this project, I used the Thailand market. So you'll notice the incentive values are in Thai bahts. About 33 Thai bahts is equivalent to $1 US. On the right side, we can see a snapshot of the journey tree. In the center, we have the performance bonus as the backbone, with all incentives branching off. In this example, this ABO has achieved 12% performance bonus and has graduated from the CSI incentive. They are currently receiving the Bronze Foundation incentive for this current period, but have not completed the requirements for Bronze Builder, as it's indicated by the gray bubble. Next slide, please. The journey tree is also fully interactive. It accepts data as input and updates the data live. The image on the right paints a picture of what this looks like. In the example, we are using CSI. In the top left image, we have a performance bonus of 3%, which gives us a CSI of 7%. As the performance bonus increases, the lines that go to the CSI outer ring also updates, as well as the percentage bubble on the outer ring. Once we reach the higher than 9% on the performance bonus, we then graduate from CSI and receive a green check. This is just one of many examples. Each incentive and their requirements are fully interactive, showing an AVO where they currently stand in the Amway compensation model and how they can achieve the next goal. Next slide, please. As I briefly highlighted earlier, when an incentive is clicked on, a modal pop-up will display more details. It shows bonus calculations and breakdowns, list of requirements with indicators, and a previous award history. On the left is a desktop view. Here we have completed all requirements. Since we met all requirements for the period of July, we get a green check and award history. On the right is the mobile view. Here we're missing one requirement of the 1000 ppb. So the progress indicator I mentioned below is shown below. Next slide, please. On a mobile device, the core functionality is the same as the desktop. However, the tree structure is somewhat simplified and shows the overall progress of each incentive. As always, tapping on the incentive will display the modal with more details. Next slide, please. If you have any questions or comments, I would love to hear about them. Please post them in the chat. Thank you. And thank you to Amway for the opportunity of having this internship. Up next, we have Claire.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Carson. My name is Claire Schmidt, and I'll be presenting on monitoring and alerting as it relates to Kafka. If you could go to the next slide. So in terms of introduction, my name is Claire, and I'm a senior at the University of Michigan. I'm majoring in cognitive science and computer science, and I'm minoring in Spanish. So theoretically, I should be able to do this presentation in Spanish. I would give the caveat that I would need ample prep time. This summer, I worked as an IT platform engineering intern for the Magic IT platform team. Specifically, I worked under functions of observability. In my free time, I love to try new recipes. I've been on a bit of a crepe binge recently. They are not as difficult as you think they're going to be, so I would definitely suggest trying them. I also really love TV and music. On a personal note, I actually grew up in Ada and went to Forest Central. My mom also worked for Amway for about 8 or 9 years, so I'm pretty familiar with how Amway functions as a business model and as a tenant of the community. This is also my second year as an intern. You go to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, so less so than having one contained summer project, I more function to build out and research different aspects of monitoring and alerting for Kafka stabilization. On this slide, I have a small graphic that I'll walk you through to explain how Amway's system interacts with Kafka and why observability is so important. So as a bit of background, Amway's Magic Bonus was originally an in-house creation implemented as a monolith. Monoliths end up coming with a few problems, especially as the input to the system grows. So this isn't a super efficient solution for Amway as a modern company. So right now, Bonus is trying to break up the monolith and move towards contained microservices based on an event-driven architecture. Depending on the architecture, data can be represented and flow through the system in different ways. In this case, data is packaged into events. So when there's a change in the system, if someone orders something or they need to change something in their personal account, that registers as an event. Something has changed in the system. So these events are packaged and published to Kafka. Kafka is a third-party platform which stores and manages a record of events. These events can then be sent to microservices to do whatever the function is that they need to do. In doing this, there are less contingencies to slow down the system, as you would see in the monolith. Right now, we are kind of at an in-between point, so we aren't fully in the monolith or fully microservices. So we're transferring over. However, and then this sending of data is represented at the top of the graphic from left to right, so Amway to Kafka. However, since we are sending a lot of data to an external platform, monitoring the transfer of data, maintaining its storage in Kafka, and having insight and maneuverability of our data structures is extremely important. I represented this observability in the top center graphic. Currently in this spot, we're heavily using platforms like Lenses and Dynatrace. You can monitor lag, storage, anomalous behavior, and many other metrics. If there is a problem, the system then needs to have triggers set up in those third-party platforms like Lenses and Dynatrace to send an alert to whatever necessary team. I have this in the bottom half of the slide here. Right now, we are using Slack webhooks and ServiceNow tickets to get information out to whatever team is needed. If you could go to the next slide. Great. So on this slide, I'm just going to explain a little bit more about what concepts and skills I gained over the course of the summer. So obviously, I got farther into what it means to be based in an event-driven architecture, specifically as it relates to Kafka. I also used AWS Cloud9 for the first time. Prior to this, I've always used local repositories and then pushed to Git. So I've never interacted with something like Cloud9, and I actually haven't worked with any AWS services before. So that was a really cool experience. I also learned much more about AWS on a macro level. And why AWS has become such a driving force of change and has been pushed towards for Amway as a whole. I also got to work on a more logistic scale with Microsoft Teams and see some more agile in practice. Also, and this is a bit of a side note, but I was involved in finding the platform Lenses, which I mentioned earlier during my last internship. So it's been really cool to see how it's ended up being implemented a year later. So that was just a really satisfying thing to be able to witness. If you could go to the next slide. Great, thank you. And then finally, I just want to give a shout out to the internship program for emphasizing learning and being really open to that process and actively encouraging it. It was a really odd summer that forced a lot of flexibility both on my end and for Amway, and Amway really embraces that. And then in terms of the project going forward and Kafka stabilization, the team is moving toward a more consistent standard of alerting because there's not one form of alerting. A lot of people have different forms of monitoring, and it can be a bit inconsistent. So they're going to try to move towards a consistent standard of alerting. And then also, as much as possible, for similar reasons, concentrating what we use for monitoring. So right now, like I said, Dynatrace and Lenses, but we have some other things in the works. And you want to be able to keep that as concentrated as possible so that everybody isn't using various methods. And then just overall efficiency of our event-driven architecture. That just comes with time as we break up the monolith, which is very difficult to do, given that we have to keep everything functioning at the same time. Yeah, and then that's pretty much the end of mine. I really appreciate you guys coming and taking the time. And it's been so interesting to see everybody else's projects and what they were working on this summer. If you do have any questions, do put them in the Q&A like other people have said. And thank you for your time. I'm going to pass it off to Katrina.
Hi, everyone. My name's Katrina Drosky, and I'll be presenting on what I accomplished throughout my internship these past 12 weeks. Next slide. So about myself, I previously interned last summer in the ISR department. Some fun facts: I'm a part of the Ferris State cross country and track team, and I also study information security and intelligence, and my graduation date is May of this coming spring. And I also grew up in Lowell, family moved to Ada, and now I go to school in Big Rapids. Next slide. So project summary. This project is about me creating a live dashboard that revolves around ISR's awareness and training initiatives. The dashboard is live through an API and it can be interactive for specific users. I researched and received feedback from stakeholders to strengthen my ideas throughout the summer. Alteryx is used to prepare the data, while Tableau is used to create my charts and graphs that I made for visualization, and the audience is also geared towards ISR members. Next slide. Steps to success. The steps to success is about getting the best results you can achieve. Understanding your data helps you get the best outcome. This is how researching and creating mock charts and graphs help prepare me for my final draft of my dashboard. So I research, get access to platforms of the PhishMe site and the InfoSec site, and then get connection to the API, create the charts and graphs, and then it helps me understand my data, and I receive feedback and then create the dashboard. Next. So my completed milestones. All of these milestones are important because it got me from point A to point B. The first major task was for myself to research. Some of the tools and concepts were completely new to me. So what I did to make me understand the concept more is that I contacted stakeholders within and out of my department for advice. Once I understood the software tools, I was able to get the PhishMe API working. And then I was also able to connect the CSV files that the API created and brought it into Tableau. In case any of you guys were wondering, an API is an application programming interface, and it involves a token, and it involves two applications that are talking to each other. And I also received Alteryx workflows to use for it as an individual campaign base, and then I also created a workflow that involves all campaigns on the training side of creating my dashboards. And then I also next started to understand my data by creating mock graphs and charts, and towards the end, feedback helped me see what graphs I needed to include in my deliverables, and in the end, I replicated graphs that are already being reported for phishing, and I included the reported and susceptibility rate. Next slide. So this is an example of an Alteryx workflow. There's a couple of them. The ones on the left are the ones I used for the phishing side, and the ones on the right are the ones I used for the training side of my data. In order to successfully use an API, you have to use the correct information in the URL area and a correct token, which is under the authorization section. At first I had connection issues, but then I got it resolved through asking for guidance from people who specialized in this area. And then each workflow writes a new CSV file that can be used in Tableau. So it helps prepare the data to make my graphs look visual within Tableau. Next slide. So with Tableau, the phishing and training data, once I got my license working for Tableau, I started to create charts and graphs for visualization of the phishing and training data. There are also certain files needed in order to let the Alteryx workflows work correctly, and this includes campaign files and LGS files. API for phishing is not connected for all campaigns, so it's just an individual base. And the InfoSec Alteryx workflows has individual and all campaigns for trends over time. Next slide. So this is a dashboard I created for computer-based training. It shows that trends are low over time and that as time goes on, we're getting more people to participate in trainings, which we want the trends to get better. The InfoSec campaign is from January to June, and it's interactive by being able to select which month, region, or status you prefer to view. The graph on the top is a view of the status by month and region, and the text table shows each month and region with the status. The graph on the right is a view with region and status with filtering through E1 and E2, which is employee versus contractor, and this data is continuous as the trends add up each month, and it's the need to know new hire training campaign data. Next slide. So this is a dashboard that I created for the phishing side. It shows the global breakdown. The bar chart above shows each region with percentages. It is also filtered by reported rate, susceptibility rate, which are two calculated fields that I had to create in order to replicate phishing graphs that are already being reported on. The two below the bar chart are from a division standpoint, and this data is based on one scenario that took place in 2021. And the susceptibility rate is how much individuals are susceptible to clicking phishing links, and it helps spread awareness because you could then tell which region or division needs more training. Next slide. This is another graph and dashboard for phishing that's more simple. So it's a pre-built static dashboard for the GCR region. And I have also created others as replicas of different regions and ones that are interactive also. The bar chart above shows the rates for a division breakdown, while the bar below shows one total for just GCR alone. So pretty much all of the division would add up to the bars below, and then the text chart is a copy of the numbers from the bar chart above. And it's helpful because each team member from their region could have an easy and accessible way to see how their region is doing with the reported and susceptibility rate. And in case you're wondering, the reported rate is the number of emails reported divided by the number of emails delivered. And the susceptibility rate is the number of emails clicked divided by the number delivered. Next slide. So this graph is another breakdown of how you could see an example of how on the phishing side, it can be interactive. So the little filters include the region, division, and location. And between each chart, you can toggle between what view you want. You could select a specific region or division, etc. And it shows location, region, and a global viewpoint of EIA. Next slide. So a recap of what was created. This is a recap of the dashboards I just previously shown. Phishing, I have successfully created charts from an individual campaign to show location, division, region, and global breakdowns. And on the training side, I have done both individual and all campaigns to include location, division, region, status, upline, and employee and contractors. Next slide. So this is an example of an in-person training worksheet. So throughout my internship, I learned that ISR also conducts mandatory in-person training. Therefore, I created a spreadsheet with mock data in which could be used to collect data and automatically create pivot charts and graphs. It can be also used in monthly reports, which would be helpful for executives in my department. I created drop downs, which allows the user to select instead of type, and this gets rid of errors from typing, which is shown on the screenshot on the left. And the only ones where you'd have to type are the campaign title and number trained. And then the screenshot on the right shows an example how you could automatically take that data and turn it into a pivot table or graph to show an individual month with how many people each instructor trained. Next slide. How I overcome problems. So feedback from my peers helped me think how they would prefer to view the data. Research helps me find new ways to fix any problems or new ways to visualize the data. And in order to gain knowledge on Alteryx, I contacted others in the analytics community. Tableau and Alteryx also have groups on Microsoft Teams, which I thought was super helpful for a new intern trying to seek guidance. And as an intern, I also find that it's normal to receive lots of information at once. So if I ever feel I'm at information overload, I can just take a step back and clear my mind and focus again. And also writing my notes on my computer helped me organize my thoughts. Next slide. So what I learned to never give up, know that there's an end goal as part of the process, more about awareness and training as I focused on this functional team, more about the tools, Tableau and Alteryx, and I also got the opportunity to attend governance and change management meetings weekly, which I thought was super helpful to learn another new skill. And also, if my data doesn't look right within Tableau, it means that I had to fix something with Alteryx because I found out that I had to do that a couple times throughout my journey of creating a dashboard and then also bringing CSV files into Tableau. Next slide. Favorite parts. So a couple of my favorite parts, one of them was the meet and greets because I got to meet different executives from a range of departments and I enjoyed listening to the advice they had to offer. And also that the importance of networking is a favorite part because it gets your name out there and you know that there are more opportunities than you think there are. And then a really fun event that I got to be a part of this summer was our department's day away at the Whitecaps game. And it was fun because I got to meet people in person for the first time. And I also got to meet faces that I've worked with this summer and last summer. Next slide. Takeaways / feedback for Amway. So this internship has helped me give myself new perspectives and opportunities to expand my security knowledge. Amway did a great job at having us interns network with other stakeholders through meet and greets, and I also thought that we gained a lot of useful information, including how to manage the change from college to working in the real world. And I also thought that the midpoint review was a simple way to test my performance as it was more user-friendly compared to last summer. Next slide. Thank you for listening to my presentation and what all of us interns had to present on, and I'll be passing it on to Kieran next. Thank you.
Thank you, Katrina, and thank you all for joining us today. My name is Kieran Schimmel, and I am on my second summer with the Magic API team, and this summer I focused on UM process monitoring and code refactoring. Next slide, please. So first, a little bit about me. I'm currently a student up at Michigan Technological University in Houghton, Michigan. And last December, I actually graduated with my Bachelor's of Science in Management Information Systems. I'm currently pursuing a Master of Business Administration, which I should receive in May of 2022. When I'm not at work or attending classes, I like spending time cooking, hiking or biking up in the Keweenaw, and software development, which can range from bash scripting for system administration or doing some web design and development for one of the local nonprofits in Calumet, Michigan. Next slide, please. So my internship this year, as I said, I was with the API team again, and a quick overview of that team is It has several developers, some with Amway, some from Bravo LT. We have a tech lead, a product owner, and a scrum master. And my goal this summer was to finish up the end of month monitoring event that I started last summer. We actually found that it needed to be triggered in a different place and some logic needed to be changed. So that was the main goal. And because I finished that early, I ended up working on some code cleanup and improvements, some additional ticket work, and I actually got to learn about the microservice deployment and was able to actually do one of those with my team. Next slide, please. So the end of month monitoring Kafka event can basically be broken down into a few graphics. So there's a helper class that will write the process and step data to Oracle. And in that helper class, we're actually injecting the month end or the end of month Kafka event helper. And so that allows us to intercept the data in two ways. We can either grab the data once it has been approved by the helper methods, and then we can send that to the EOM helper, or we can actually use an access class to grab that data from the database and then send that to our helper. So once we have that data and it goes to our helper, it adds a few things, validates the data, and gets that sent up to Confluent Cloud, which is our Apache Kafka as a service provider. So that data is then grabbed and sent to Elasticsearch, which is kind of the long-term storage for that. And from there, we're able to take that data and put it into Grafana so we can make some changes to it and visualize it easier. So if we can go on to the next slide, please. We can look at the current dashboard that is in Splunk. This dashboard is pretty useful. It shows you the status for each affiliate during their month-end process. It gives the process that is running and the start and end time for it, which is great and all, but doesn't give you everything that the database is actually receiving, which is where we bring in our event. On the next slide, please. So this is actually the Grafana dashboard showing all the data from those events that are raised. It gives us more of a granular view on what each affiliate is actually doing. So as you can see, this actually ran in prod over the weekend, so that was nice to actually see the project finished by the end of the summer. So we can see the event count by affiliate, the total process time for affiliate, to see how long it's taking for them to go through every process and step for the month-end process. The average time it takes for that specific affiliate, and then the average time for the certain process code. So we can see that maybe the LOS build is taking a long time for all affiliates, and that data will be a little bit skewed due to the fact that some affiliates are much larger than others. And then on the bottom there, we actually can see each individual event, so we can understand what step and process they are at, and as well as the process time for that individual process or sub-step that it's going through. Next slide, please. So after that was all finished up and waiting to go into testing, I had some extra time to go through the methods that I wrote in our access classes for that event. And we actually found that to clean that up, we wanted to add try with resources. So that allows us to get rid of the finally block for actually closing those resources. So that allows us to use fewer lines of code, and those are automatically closed. So then we wanted to get everything that we wrote and everything in those access classes under test. And that required us to be able to pass the embedded database, which is an in-memory database that runs when our tests are run or the build is run. So that is actually passing in the embedded database, or if it's not being run as a test, it is actually just passing in the connection from dbutils. So getting that all under test required getting that connection between the embedded database and the access classes. We were able to put that all together and improve the method coverage so we can actually validate that everything returned what was expected. And overall, that was able to add 116 additional tests across those 4 access classes that the UM event was using this summer. Next slide, please. So overall, I learned many things while I was here at Amway for my second summer. I learned a lot more about the Kafka eventing and how to get that all set up and configured from conception to end. I also learned a lot about Java and SQL and WebSphere. I had to do a lot of troubleshooting with WebSphere, so that was a lot of maybe unnecessary learning, but it was good. And then microservices, I got to learn through some of the bug tickets that we had for that and the deploy. And organization, so with the change that Amway is going through, it's kind of a good opportunity as an intern to see how that all works, as that is likely to happen in our lifespan. I also got to learn about the several areas of IT that the other interns were working in. We worked with a weekly Chalk Talk, so we had other interns tell us about their area and what they did this summer. And then we also got to meet up with several executives to hear about their careers and have them answer questions and answer some questions for them. So my takeaways from this is problem solving wise, my team was there to help me, and there are many people in Amway who are always willing to help. We also found that the remote internships were super available for IT interns. It worked well, as proven again, but we do miss out on some of that in-person experience. And then we also had many resources supporting us during the internship. So big thank you to the core team and the HR team who helped set up some of those events and connect us with many opportunities this summer. Next slide, please. And if anyone has any questions, please send them to the QA. And again, thank you for being here. I will pass it back to Abby, who will help wrap us up. Thank you.
Thanks, Kieran. So just before we close things out today, I just wanted to give a quick thank you to everyone that helped with the intern program. So obviously the interns had a very busy summer and they learned a lot. They had great presentations today, so good job to all of you. But it does take a village to really support this program, and this program is extremely important to our talent pipeline here at Amway. So just going to quick run through the list because I think it needs to be said, but the core team members, so Will, Jake, Jennifer, Jamie, and Quincy, they help all year round to make sure that we're thinking about onboarding and offboarding and making internship offers and posting, job posts and working with HR and planning events. So they were really key to making sure that the summer was successful. So thank you to all of them, especially for today too, for working in the background to make sure this production went well. And then of course the hiring managers, so Matt, Aaron, Hema, Ram, and Adil, all of them, took extra time to raise their hand and say, I want an intern. And they really worked closely with them to support them over the 12 weeks. So thank you for doing that. And then the advisors as well. So Danielle, Mike, Nate, Quincy, and Raphael. Really, advisors play a key role in making sure that the intern has someone to go to daily, that they can ask questions and help guide them as they're learning here on their new teams. So thank you everyone for stepping up to the plate. And I know it takes a little bit of an extra time out of your daily job, but it is very appreciated. And then thank you to our 4 executives as well. Beth, Jeff, Tom, and Ashish, all of them took the time out of their very busy summer schedule this year to sit down and network with the interns. And I think that was great too, to get some one-on-one time. So with that, we're going to wrap up a little early today, but great job everyone. And thank you everyone for tuning in, for asking questions. You, again, can pose any questions you would like to the interns in the chat and they will be happy to answer to you. And feel free to reach out to any of them as well if you have any questions, but we will wrap up a little early today. And thank you again, everyone. Have a good day.